Hello! Today we're gonna make a bowl. I'm not sure exactly what size it's gonna end up being, but maybe something for cereal, a pasta dish, or a small salad. I'm gonna use this very dark brown clay, but it's actually gonna end up being more yellowish after firing. Okay, let's get started. I'm just gonna throw this in the center, like that, and make my hands wet. Turn on the wheel. So now I'm trying to center this clay. I'm using support from my elbows and knees, just trying to keep my hands in a steady place. And I want to bring this up and down. When your hands are not moving, your piece is centered. And I'm gonna turn up the speed a bit. Okay, so now I think my piece is fairly centered. My hands are not moving. And that means I should start making a hole. So I'm just gonna put my thumbs in the middle. And when my thumbs are not moving, it means that I've found the center. I'm just gonna let my thumbs rest here in the middle. And then I'm gonna slow down the speed as well. And slowly push my thumbs down to create this hole in here. I add some more water in here. Okay, now I think this should be deep enough. So what I'm gonna do now is just pull and make this hole wider. Add some water. And I pull this towards myself. I think we can make it a bit deeper as well. But not too deep, because we need some clay in the bottom to be able to remove this later and to trim the bottom. Okay, we'll make this a bit wider. The clay feels super smooth. I like that. It's the first time I'm using this clay, but so far it's been really nice. Just gonna make this a bit wider. Okay, clean this up a bit. So what I've been taught is that you should work as much as possible around here, so 20 minutes past, and move the edges upward. But I kind of like doing this. I guess it's not the proper way. But at least as a start, when the edges or when the walls are still fairly thick. More water. So let's bring up the edges. Once more. Okay, so now I'm gonna try to make the walls a bit higher. So I'm pushing from both sides, and then I slowly pull them upwards. Slowly. If I go too fast, then my edges will become uneven, and that, of course, we don't want. So slowly. Okay, so what I'm thinking now is that I probably want to make this bowl a bit wider. And let's add some water so I don't get this friction between my fingers and the bowl. I want to make it a bit wider. So I'm going to do the same thing again, but try to not just push it up, but push it out from the center. Like that. And it might look like a pretty big bowl for cereal, but the thing is that clay shrinks when it fires, which means that this bowl will end up being way smaller after firing. So always make your bowls slightly bigger than you want them. Okay, I think that looks kind of nice. We have a lot of water in the center. I'm just going to remove that with a sponge. Like that. Okay, looking pretty good, I think. I'm gonna use both hands and just feel how thick the bowl is. And if it's even or not. But what I recommend is focusing on the inside, because you can always trim the outside. So make sure that your inside feels even and has a nice slope from center all the way out. Okay, I think this looks pretty good now. What I'm gonna do before taking it off is to remove some of the excess clay at the bottom of this piece. And I'm gonna use this kind of tool and carefully remove some of the clay here. So I just put this tool like this, and then I carefully remove the clay like this. Okay, let's take it off. I'm gonna use these to take it off. Dip them in water and then just carefully push this in and voila! So now I'm just gonna let this one dry for at least 4 hours or so, and then I'm gonna trim the bottom so that looks nice as well. So now we've waited for a bit more than 4 hours. The clay is cold and quite hard, which means that it's ready for trimming. And before I turn it around, I'm just gonna get my fingers wet and put some water on the rim, like this. Then I'm gonna try to put this in the center of the wheel. And I'm gonna use the circles here on the wheel to get it centered. Some people like to tap it, but I haven't figured out how that works yet. Okay, and to check that your bowl is centered, Again, you can just put your fingers on the side, and if the fingers are not moving, then your piece is centered. So what I'm going to start doing now is to take off these very uneven parts here. And I prefer to use one of the bigger tools. And I know I can remove a lot of clay here. So I'm not worried about making a hole. Oops. So now it's getting quite smooth here, which is great. So now is the time to define where your foot is going to be. So I think my foot is going to start around here. And this will be the inner part of it. And hopefully now I have enough clay to remove here. And I'm going to use a different tool. I'm going to use this one and just remove . So now I'm going to start working on the inner circle here, or the inside of the foot. And if you get worried that your clay is getting too thin, then you can just tap. And it feels like I still have a lot of clay to remove here. So not worried just yet. And what we want to make sure is that when we put this bowl on the table, it's steady and doesn't wiggle around. So I'm making sure to be perfectly horizontal here and keeping my hands in a stable position. And what I also want to make sure is that this right here is deeper than the actual foot. Otherwise, this won't be stable. Now, I'm just going back to the outside here and want to make sure that I get a nice slope and that it is even. And I want to go all the way down to the bottom so that I don't get some sort of border between where I trimmed and where I didn't trim. So my clay is actually still pretty moist and quite hard to work with now. So I'm going to use my fingers to just make it a bit more smooth here. So I think this looks good enough now, and I'm ready to sign. I'm just gonna put my name here. And I like putting the year as well. Let's see if we can turn this over. Let's do it. Oi, oi, oi. So I'm gonna put this on the side and let it dry for some hours. And then it's time to get this piece fired. Thanks for watching. If you want to see more videos like this, please subscribe.